Week 16 of the fantasy football season with the semifinals here for fantasy owners. Here's the top 36 wide receivers I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. So Puka Nacua, it's been a great season for him. 2 games in a row. He's gone out there and put up big numbers. And this week at Seattle, it is a tougher matchup, in-division matchup as well. But Puka Nacua, especially if Adams doesn't give it a go in this game, where right now he's being called the game-time decision. It just means more targets and more receptions coming his way. Number 2, Jackson Smith-Njigba of the Seattle Seahawks. What a year it's been for him. He's already broken the record for the most receiving yards in a season as a Seattle Seahawk. And this week with the Rams coming in, you know this is going to be a high-scoring game. Most likely it's Thursday night. It's a division matchup. And JSN and Sam Darnold, since week 1, they've been locked in. And JSN's been putting up points. Number 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. What a game it was for him last week. He went off St. Brown over 150 yards, found the end zone twice. It was a tough loss at the Rams. And this week, Pittsburgh coming in. And we know this offense is more explosive, even at home, than it is on the road for this Detroit Lion team. So this week, I think St. Brown, he goes out there once again, has a good game. I'm not saying putting up the numbers like he did last week, but still, you know, weekly, he's a top 5 receiver. Number 4, Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this offense did nothing last week, but Chase still had 132 yards receiving. So Chase having a big year. Once again, he was the number 1 pick in fantasy football. And this week, it's a great matchup at the Miami Dolphins, where their defense really can't stop anyone. So I think Chase, once again, will go out there and get his numbers. Number 5, Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. So last week, he starts the game off with a 57-yard touchdown. And we don't see from him till like the fourth quarter in that game where he scored another touchdown. So this week, another slam dunk matchup versus the Vegas Raiders, a defense that can't stop anyone. And Nico Collins, when healthy, he is one of the better wide receivers in all the league. Number 6, CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Last week, a nice game it was for CeeDee Lamb, and I thought he was going to be out last week the way that concussion went down, but obviously he didn't miss any time, and he went over 100 yards in the bad loss versus the Minnesota Vikings. So this week with the Chargers coming in, they're definitely a good defense, is this Charger team, but CeeDee Lamb's matchup proof pretty much his whole career. And I think this week he goes out there, once again, get his points. Number 7, A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. A.J. Brown's really turned the season around over the last month of the season, but I think at this point they're just peppering with targets. Jalen Hurts is force-feeding A.J. Brown at times, and this team's 2-3 ever since the big blow-up when he came out and he wanted the football and talking to the media and stuff. But A.J. Brown, this week, a great matchup with the Commanders. A win this week, they clinched the division, and I think Brown will get his numbers again this week as well. Number 8, Davante Adams of the Los Angeles Rams. So like I said, Adams, he's going to be a game-time decision most likely. This hamstring injury early in the week, it was claimed, especially after the game last week versus the Lions, that most likely he's going to be week to week and miss times, but now McVay coming out saying he's going to be a game-time decision. So if Adams plays, he's still a top-ranked receiver for me. One of the best receivers in the league, receiving touchdown-wise this season. And this week at Seattle, you know they've got to put points on the board if they want to win this one. Number 9, Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. So there's optimism. He's going to play this week is Drake London. It's a great matchup at the Arizona Cardinals, a defense that can't stop anyone. And Drake London and Kirk Cousins, last year they were putting up numbers before Cousins got benched for Michael Penix. So if London's back in the lineup, he's going to be a big boost for fantasy owners. And obviously a guy who could put up some big games. Number 10, Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. So every game Marvin Harrison's out, Wilson 15 or more fantasy points in PPR league. So this week a good matchup, Atlanta coming in. Fast track back at home, where this offense is better for this Arizona Cardinal team at home than it is on the road. And Michael Wilson's been a top option weekly in the games Harrison's missed. Number 11, George Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys. So the last 2 weeks, bad games for George Pickens. And maybe the contract talk got to him or whatever the case may be, but week 14 versus the Lions, some routes he stopped. He didn't run hard. He was going through the motions in that game. And then last week as well, barely getting targeted. Fourth quarter, he made a couple catches in that one, but really it was a CeeDee Lamb show, and he was more like a decoy, it seemed, in that game. So very odd the last couple weeks here with George Pickens, but this week we'll see if he gets back on track. Number 12, Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. So this Lion offense, they're putting up their points, but still they're losing these ball games in high-scoring games. So this week, decent matchup with Pittsburgh coming in. And J-Mo, he's been on a tear ever since Dan Campbell's taken over the play-calling job for this Detroit Lion team. So this week, once again, I think Williams, he's going to go out there and he's been a matchup-proof receiver the last month of the year. 13, Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. So this week, a good matchup. New York Jets coming in. Obviously, their defense is depleted. Traded Sauce Gardner, traded Quinn Williams, traded Michael Carter a month ago at the trade deadline. And also, as well, they fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. So this Jet team in disarray, and Chris Olave's been a solid option all year long. And Tyler Sharp really leans on him as the number one option. And now with Devon Bailey most likely out, that's even more targets for Olave this week. 14, Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this offense, they put up a lot of yards in last week's game. And Mike Evans, he's a great receiver. He's still got the big playability. Just injuries have been a concern the last 2 seasons for him. But this week, back once again, big division game for first place. He had the Carolina Panthers. These two teams, they're going to go at it this week. And I think Mike Evans, he's going to go out there once again, be that big deep ball threat and be a big red zone target for Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. 15, Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, this whole offense is going to take a hit with one of the best quarterbacks in the league out for the season, and Patrick Mahomes. And this Chief team out of it as well, 6-8, eliminated from the playoffs. In the last couple weeks, Rashee Rice, he's been held in check. But this week, it is a good matchup at Tennessee. And Gardner Minshew, at least he's a quarterback that stretches the field and gets that football down the field. I know he's not that good of a quarterback. I know he turns the football over. But still, I think Rice could put up decent production with Minshew in there. 16, Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. So this Miami Dolphin team, pretty much this offense has been the majority of the season. Devon Achane, obviously, Waddle at times. But the last couple weeks now, especially last week, Darren Waller is going out there making plays for this Miami Dolphin team. Possibility there could be a quarterback change this week in Miami. Mike McDaniel says he's considering it. And the backups, Zach Wilson and Owers, the 2 quarterbacks over there in Miami, where obviously Waddle, his value will take even more of a hit if Zach Wilson comes in. But this week, it's a good matchup versus Cincinnati Bengals. Their defense really hasn't stopped anyone all season long. And Waddle, he's easily the number one option in this passing game ever since Hill went down with the season-ending injury. 17, T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. So T. Higgins, he's been out on and off with a concussion. Is Higgins. We'll see if he returns this week. And it's a good matchup to get back on track at Miami. Obviously, we know this season's over for Cincinnati. They got blown out last week's game and shut out. So this week, Higgins will be a well-needed addition for this offense and for fantasy owners with a good matchup. 18, Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. Courtland Sutton having a good season. Last week, he had a big game versus the Green Bay Packers. And this week, Jacksonville's coming in. And I know the Jaguars, they're playing great football. But their defense, I think in a matchup versus a pretty good offense at Denver, is going to have some trouble. And that's where Courtland Sutton comes in. And once again, I think he'll go out there and have a solid game. 19, Juwan Jennings of the San Francisco 49ers. He's the number 1 wide receiver this season is Jennings. He's been playing with multiple injuries throughout the year, but he's a guy that's going out there and producing. Him and Brock Purdy always had good rapport. We're going back a few years ago. Obviously, they were backups and they practiced together, and obviously in preseason as well. So the rapport is there, and this week a good matchup on the fast track in Indianapolis, where I think Jennings, he'll have a good ball game. 20, DK Metcalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So last week, what a touchdown it was from Metcalf. I know he's a touchdown-dependent wide receiver, but he's easily the number 1 option in the passing game. I know they brought guys in like Valdez-Scantling, Adam Thielen over the last few weeks, and Scantling found the end zone last week, but still Metcalf easily the number 1 wideout, and him and Rodgers have been hitting on some plays over the last couple weeks where he's bounced back. 21, Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Giants. It's been a solid season for Wan'Dale Robinson. Obviously, he's the number 1 receiver, and he's been pretty much a majority of the season since Neighbors went out early in the year with the torn ACL. And Wan'Dale, good underneath route runner, good hands. And this week versus Minnesota, their defense you could pass on. And also, you could get behind that secondary a little bit. And I think Robinson could go out there, have a good game once again this week. 22, Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers, he's the number 1 option in this passing game for this Baltimore Raven team. I know it's been up and down this season with this offense. One big week, one bad week type of thing. And this week with England coming into town, we know New England, one of the best teams in the league, even though last week they blew a 21-0 lead and lost to the Buffalo Bills. So I think Flowers, he could go out there. He's going to get his targets. It's just about him, obviously, getting more open and making some plays because he's had drop problems in the past. And we saw once again over the last couple weeks dropping some easy passes and potential touchdowns. 23, Jacoby Myers of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's been a big trade deadline acquisition for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. And Jakobi Meyers, he's going out there playing some of the best football of his career. And obviously it's a contract season as well where he's going to want to get paid. So he wanted out of Vegas, and rightfully so. It's just a bad organization over there and nothing going on and losing a ton of games. So right now, he's inspired. He's playing good football as Myers. And this week, even in the tough matchup at Denver, I still think he could find some ways and have a good game. 24, Ladd McConkey, Los Angeles Chargers. His numbers have definitely dropped off over the last month of the season. And obviously, Justin Herbert not 100%. And the whole offense is taking a hit because of Herbert not being 100%. And rightfully so when your franchise quarterback is struggling. But this week, I think they could get back on track. This is a great matchup at the Dallas Cowboys, a defense that can't stop anyone. We just saw Minnesota go in there and score over 30 points at Dallas. I think Ladd McConkey this week could get back on track. 25, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. So him and McCarthy, they just can't hit. Last week, there was 2 potential touchdowns. One a little overthrown, and another one Jefferson dropped in the end zone at the Dallas Cowboys. So Justin Jefferson, he's in a major slump. I know I've been saying it, and time's running out on the fantasy football season that he's due for a big game. But this week, another good matchup on paper at the New York Giants. But the way the season's been going for Jefferson, I can't rank him much higher than in that top 20, 25 range. 26, Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. So when healthy, we know Terry McLaurin's a good wide receiver. He's going to go out there and make plays. Last week, he had a nice 50-yard touchdown at the New York Giants. This week, obviously, a tougher matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league in Philadelphia. But most likely, it's going to be a game they're trailing early and often and have to chase points. And McLaurin could work into some production. 27 to Tor McMillan of the Carolina Panthers. This week, decent matchup. Tampa Bay coming in. First place matchup for the division. And McMillan the last couple weeks, yeah, his numbers have dropped off. But this Carolina Panther offense plays better at home than it does on the road. So this week they know they got to put points on the board. There's no Baker Mayfield, especially when Mike Evans back in the lineup. He's going to use that full potential gunslinging mentality to get the football down the field and make big plays. And McMillan, hopefully this week, like I said, he goes out there and he bounces back. 28, Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. So this week, good matchup at the Commanders. Their defense can't stop anyone. But the thing is, Devonta Smith's pretty much the fourth option, in my opinion, in this offense. You got Barkley, A.J. Brown back on track, putting up big numbers. And obviously Dallas Goedert, he's been a solid tight end all season long and found the end zone twice last week. But this week, it just takes one big deep ball with the Commanders for him to have a day. 29, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The last couple weeks, he's wrote the ship a little bit as Thomas Jr. Last week, he found the end zone, even though it was the New York Jets. This week, obviously, a tougher matchup at the Broncos, where most likely Patrick Surtain will be shadowing him in this game. But this offense, they're spreading it out. They're playing good football. And Liam Cohen, obviously, taking in a lot of his offense where he was the coordinator with Tampa Bay and implementing it here with Jacksonville. And it's paying big dividends where they're 10-4 in the season. So now we'll see if Thomas Jr. could put up a good third game in a row. 30, Emeka Egbuka of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Emeka Egbuka, he came out of the gate hot in his rookie season this season, and now he's hit the wall a little bit. And now with Mike Evans back in the lineup, his numbers are obviously going to take a hit. Where Chris Godwin's getting healthy as the weeks go on as well. So Emeka Egbuka is still a big play type of wide receiver. He's a guy with home run ability every time he touches the football in open space. And this week at Carolina, we'll see if he can bounce back up the rankings. 31, Jayden Reed of the Green Bay Packers. So this week, decent matchup at the Bears, even though this Bear defense has been playing well over the last few weeks. But now Christian Watson, it's not looking promising he's going to play in this game with the shoulder and the check where Patrick Surtain landed on him, where they were going for a jump ball last week in that game at the Denver Broncos. So Jayden Reed back in the offense more. Obviously, they line him up all over the place, and this week he could be operating as the number one wide receiver. 32, Luther Burden III of the Chicago Bears. So Luther Burden's optimistic he's going to play in this game. He tweaked his ankle and left in the blowout victory versus the Browns last week. And Luther Burden, he's getting more targets than any of these receivers now. Rome Odunze, it's not looking good for him to play in this game, where his foot's been an issue over the last few weeks on and off. So this week versus the Packers, you still got to put points on the board. And like I said, Luther Burden, he's been a big part of the offense with an expanded role over the last 3-4 weeks. 33, Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this week a matchup with the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, first place on the line. in this game. And Chris Godwin finally starting to look healthy. Last week he found the end zone, also had a 2-point conversion. And this Panther defense is better at home than it is on the road, but still I can see this being a high-scoring game. 34, Khalil Shakir of the Buffalo Bills. So Shakir, the number one option in the passing game, obviously, for this Bill team. He's got good hands, good route running ability. But the thing is, obviously, Josh Allen's going to get his points running the football, and obviously James Cook's going to get his points. So this week, even in a good matchup at the Browns, where they're giving up a lot of points the last couple weeks here, he's lower on this list. 35, Michael Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts. So Michael Pittman, the only receiver I actually trust this week. Phillip Rivers, we know he's not going to stretch the field. It's going to be a lot of bubble screens, quick outs, quick slants, and that's what this offense is going to run with Rivers in their quarterback at 44 years old and not mobile, and he didn't play for 5 seasons. So like I said, the ceiling isn't high, but Michael Pittman's still the number one target in this offense. And maybe in this one, it's targeting him even more. And the 36th and final receiver I'm rankings, DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. So DJ Moore, it's been an up and down year. 1 week he'll get 1 fantasy point, 2 fantasy points, and then the week after he goes out there and scores 2 touchdowns like he did last week versus the Cleveland Browns. So this week the Green Bay Packers coming in. We know they're a good defense, even with Micah Parsons out with the torn ACL for the season. I still think the Bears are going to have trouble at times in this ball game. And DJ Moore, like I said, he's scoring touchdowns at times in some of these games, but the volume and targets still haven't been there. And even after coming off a big game last week, he's not really a receiver I trust 100%. So that's the top 36 wide receivers I'm ranking for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.